T2M, dreaming and writing. We were free men once, before the familiar sun rays burnt, before we became praised for the hunt, when man enjoyed the luxury of naivety, before man was stripped of his right to innocence. Then the whites came and changed the precedents, and sons got sold for a few pieces of gold, and dreams traded for a few ounces of rum. In locks and chains, liberty was maimed and slain. Then our names got changed from Pambola, Tarido, Inyola to merely slaves, and what became our last names. A new sun rose, so does a generation. Colonial slavery got forward and freedom was once again won. But as soon as this freedom came, we became slaves all over again. Slaves to the desperate desire to fit in into the same system we bled resisting. Slavery. Now we got transformed into financial slaves. Anything so this money to make, so that we all became fake. The dirty and shaming decisions we often make. More worrisome is that conformity has justified this take. In this slavery we toil all day just to make that pay. Now our children know us more by names than they do by our nature and faces. Perceive the stench of this shame and decay. Anything for the green, so in inhumane enterprises we sunk deep as killing to protect our finances. Sometimes we even kill just to make the green all in this financial slavery. Now we are upgraded to fashion slaves. I remember when we used to dress to impress before we started dressing to please, and now we are dressing to tease. Ladies wearing skimpy things, embarrassingly revealing and seducingly appealing. Ties exposed as far as close to Jerusalem gates, and breasts nowadays get treated like a bait. There is the top, the undergarment before the bra, yet they threaten to elude or restrain. I wonder what happened to our ways to make us dress this way, with all our expensive designer belts, yet trousers don't fit on the waist well. Is it the belt that has failed? I cannot tell, but we still go with asses exposed. It must be for a reason, I suppose. Is it to show what fine body line you have, what designer boxes you wear, or that it isn't panties you wear but catapults instead? I'll tell you what though. If the history of sagging is a ground to go by, then it is safe to say the streets are brimful with prisoners and inmates. The saying used to go, cut your coat according to your clothes, but now it is, cut your coat according to what you want to show. Fashion slaves. Slavery comes in different forms, but we give it different names. There was the slavery slaves, but now we have the computer slaves, fashion slaves, mental slaves, economic slaves, sex slaves, addiction slaves, this slaves and that slaves. It seems we are all stuck to being slaves. Since such be the case, be brave to decide what form of slavery you want to subscribe to. But I will be a slave to the drive towards change. If this poem offends you, then this poem was meant for you. But if this poem impresses you, you're just a vessel. Don't keep the poem, pass it through. T2M, dreaming and writing.
Slavery comes in different forms, but we give it different names. There was the slavery slaves, but now we have the computer slaves, fashion slaves, mental slaves, economic slaves, sex slaves, addiction slaves. The list goes on and on and on. It seems we are all slaves to one thing or the other, yeah? Well, it is like being stuck between the proverbial devil and the deep blue sea. You'll either run to the devil or get drowned if you choose otherwise. Since this be the case, let us be brave to decide what kind of slavery we want to subscribe to. And like my good friend, the poet, said in that poem, let us all be slaves to the drive towards change. Change for a better society, change for a better life, and definitely change for a better Nigeria. Seth Igwe is what I go by, and I'm your foremost brand strategist and broadcast journalist who thrives in giving a pep to the step of your personal and corporate brand. And I welcome you to another scintillating episode of Seth Talks, titled slaves. Kudos once again to T2M, the poet, for that amazing poem. And many thanks to you for choosing to join me on this episode of Seth Talks. Now, you know how they say human needs are insatiable, right? How we continuously pursue all through our lives the comfort of life, only to find out that once a need is met, another surfaces elsewhere. So it is a never-ending rat race of life, and we often find ourselves trapped in this intrinsic web, and before long, we become slaves to the need for fulfillment, to the need of filling a void which we cannot describe or place. So true. Financial, economic, power, fashion, computer, and self-esteem slavery. The list is unending, but one thing is common. Like the common denominator in an arithmetic problem. There is always a need. Yes, there is definitely always a need. Once we are able to strike out the need factor from this equation and add the calmness and wellness of the mind, body, and soul that come with satisfaction, then we are home dry. I suspect you might say, or you might be saying right now, Seth, hey Seth, but the word satisfaction is relative, yeah? As what satisfies Ola might not necessarily satisfy Namdi or Kamsi or Ekemini. Well, of course, you're very correct. You know, people do not usually have the same yardstick for measuring fulfillment. You know that, yeah? For example, to two people working same job, one might aspire a seat at the table, while the other might just be contented earning a pay and remaining just another employee. So you see, to the former, he would continue being a slave to work until he attains the apex of his career. While to the latter, he would continue being a slave to the rigorous work schedules and the expectation of his monthly paycheck. So however you see it, two people can never have the same yardstick for measuring fulfillment. Now, my point exactly is that as long as day and night remain, there would definitely always be a need for something. So while you're on the quest for fulfilling such need, do not give in and throw in the towel to life's ever-changing threats. Do not be a slave to life. Do not be a slave to anything at all. Take charge of your emotions and be the best that you possibly can be right here on planet Earth. Okay, many thanks to you for listening to this episode of Seth Talks titled Slave. Now, we truly would appreciate your feedback, your contribution, your suggestion on how to make this podcast better and very interactive, because this podcast is for you as well as it is for me. Yeah, we all jointly own this podcast. So hey, hit us up with your suggestion, your feedback, and we'll definitely implement the changes as soon as possible to make the next episode a better listening experience. Seth Ego once again is what I go by. Thank you, and keep being you. And whatever you do, keep being a phoenix. Keep living the life of the phoenix.